I see you recognize our guest. Good afternoon. My name is Jim Ryan, and I'm the Dean of the Harvard Graduate School of Education. I'm delighted to welcome all of you, faculty, staff, students, and members of the community, including Cambridge School Superintendent Jeff Young and State Representative Marjorie Decker. This is our very first Askwith Forum of the year, and Senator Elizabeth Warren. Whether you are here in Askwith Hall or watching from one of our classrooms or online, I want to thank you for being with us today, and I encourage you all to check out the list of upcoming forums on our website. So first, let me preview how the event will unfold. I will say a few words of introduction, and then Senator Warren will deliver her remarks. I will then join her on stage and pose a few questions that we've received from all of you. Thanks to those who submitted questions either online, through Facebook, or on index cards right now. We'll get to as many as we can. At the end of the session, I'd ask that you please remain seated so that the senator can exit quickly. I know that she has a very packed day ahead. So it is a genuine honor to welcome Senator Elizabeth Warren to the Ed School. I say this not just because I love having fellow lawyers and particularly former law professors speak here. I say it because few people in Washington have been able to advocate for students in Massachusetts and across the country like Senator Warren has. It's perhaps not all that surprising that as a U.S. Senator from Massachusetts elected to office in 2012, she has made education a top issue. Her connection to education runs deep. Like many in the audience today, the senator is a former public school teacher, having taught special needs students in Texas right after college. Her passion for teaching never subsided. As a law professor, she won student-nominated teaching awards at 4 universities where she taught, and at Harvard Law School, she became the first professor in the school's history to win the Sachs-Freund Teaching Award twice. But it's not just a love of teaching that has kept education at the top of Senator Warren's agenda. As a leading expert in bankruptcy and consumer debt, as the former chair of the oversight panel charged with monitoring the $700 billion bank bailout after the 2008 crash, and as a creative force, and I do mean force, behind the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, she has been outspoken about the ways in which education can and should serve as a ladder of opportunity in this country. Serving on the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, Senator Warren has consistently pushed for relief for college students struggling under the weight of student loan debt. She has called for stronger investments in higher education at the state and federal level, simplification of the financial aid process, more protections for student borrowers, and increasing Pell Grants so that more low-income students can attend and afford college. She was also a co-sponsor of the Real Education for Healthy Youth Act, which encourages the use of evidence-based sex and health education programs in schools. Even before her time in Senate, she was a strong advocate for improving education. In her 2003 bestseller, for example, The Two-Income Trap, Why Middle-Class Mothers and Fathers Are Going Broke, co-written with her daughter, Amelia, she argued convincingly for publicly funded universal preschool and for more choice for parents about where their children attend school. I could go on, but I know that you are as anxious as I am to hear from the senator, so I'll conclude with just this. You don't get named Bostonian of the Year, the new sheriff of Wall Street, one of the most influential lawyers of the decade, or 3 times listed as one of the 100 most influential people in the world for keeping your opinions to yourself or for being shy about speaking the truth as you see it. Senator Warren has captured the attention and the imagination of our nation, not by appealing, as so many seem to today, to our selfishness or to our fears, but by appealing to our collective conscience as a people and by giving voice to the better angels of our nature. And I'm optimistic that with Senator Warren's voice in the mix, the crucial link between education, economic opportunity, and social justice will remain in the spotlight during the 2016 presidential election and beyond. Please join me in welcoming Senator Elizabeth Warren.
What a generous introduction. Thank you very much. Here, I'll let you get my, oh, there you go. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It is so good to be here. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dean Ryan. An enormously generous introduction, and I do appreciate it. And thank you for the invitation to be here. I am very excited to be here at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, partly because this Graduate School of Education has produced leaders in American education, and I am honored to have a chance to be here with tomorrow's leaders. I'm also just delighted to be in a room full of former and future teachers. So thank you for all you do every day. I also want to say a special shout out. Right now, Josh Delaney couldn't join us today, but he is a graduate of this fine institution from 3 years ago, 2 years ago? Just 2 years ago, and is now, through dint of circumstances and his incredible talent and training, he is now the person who is heading up ed policy for me in Washington. So there are things to do after you finish here. So look, I just want to jump straight into this. I want to talk about a couple of key issues. I'm going to focus on higher ed today. There's so much we could talk about. But I want to jump straight into it. I want to talk a little bit about policies and then leave as much time as we can for questions and answers here. It is good to be here with tomorrow's leaders because we need you. This country is in real trouble. We're trying to build a 21st century economy in a competitive world environment. And the most basic building block of that economy is a highly educated workforce. But if we stay on our current trajectory, by 2020, we will have 5 million more jobs that require a college credential than we will have college grads to fill them. Now, there is no shortage of young people who are hoping to get a college degree and who are willing to work hard for it. The problem is how much it costs. The price of college is exploding. Adjusted for inflation, think about this one. A student going to a state school today, after you've already adjusted for inflation, will pay tuition that is more than 300% of what her mom or dad would have paid just a generation ago. Now, a lot of people go to college anyway, signing on the dotted line for huge debt loads. The proportion of students needing to borrow money goes up every single year, and it's now approaching 70% of all the people who go to college. And the amount they borrow is going up as well. Average debt load now reaches $30,000, but loans can easily exceed $100,000 or more, particularly for those in graduate school. In a room full of folks who are in school, anybody have a student loan? Yeah, there we go. This is the story of what's happening right now in American higher ed. And keep in mind, once those debts exist, they compound and grow on their own. In just the last year, from last September to this September, student loan debt has jumped another $100 billion. I just want you to think about that, $100 billion in just the last 12 months. Now that debt load is squeezing millions of young people and squeezing them hard. Data show that young Americans with student loan debt are putting off buying homes, they're putting off saving for retirement, they're putting off starting businesses. And more people borrow to finance their education. The consequence is to start to slow down the economy. Already, the Treasury Department, the Federal Reserve Bank, and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau have sounded the alarm that mounting student loan debt is dragging down economic growth. So there's the problem. Our economy cannot flourish if we do not have enough college-educated workers, but our economy will stagnate if students continue to take on bigger and bigger debt loads to pay for college. It's a catch-22. Degrees push us forward, but debt holds us back. We need an affordable college education that doesn't crush students with debt. I But we can't make these changes just by nibbling around the edges. It is time to dramatically reform higher education to move the whole system toward greater affordability for everyone. Now, we've seen presidential candidates start to talk about this, and I'm genuinely delighted. But we need bold action to open the doors of opportunity wider and to invest in our collective future. And while not every kid, every college needs to graduate every student debt-free, every kid needs a debt-free option, a strong public university where it is possible to get a great education without taking on a mountain of debt. That needs to be our goal. Can I have an amen on that? So that's part one, the goal, what I wanted to talk about in this speech, where it is we need to be. What's it going to take to get us there? I believe that bringing down the cost of college is going to take a 1-2 punch. 1, more resources, and 2, better incentives to keep costs low. So I want to talk about both of those today to get us started. Let's start with the resources. Beginning in the 19th century, Congress committed itself to ensuring an affordable public education, and then states stepped up and funded those public schools. Over the years, millions of people have had access to a high-quality education at a low cost to students. Public education is still at the core of America's higher education. More than 3 out of every 4 college students in the United States is enrolled in a public college. But the costs have just gone out of sight, primarily because the states have failed to invest. In the last 25 years, the state funding, on average, has dropped 24%. In some states, the drop has been even sharper. That leaves families to borrow more money in order to make up the difference. It's time for states to back up their rhetoric about how much they support their state schools, back it up with real support for their schools. And if the states won't maintain minimum levels of investment in their own schools, then they should not have access to federal aid to let them off the hook. Instead of using its leverage to encourage the states to fund college, the federal government has just headed in the wrong direction. It has also cut back its support. In previous generations, think about what Congress did to help more people go to school. It made commitments to a GI Bill that paid for education and trained 7.8 million Americans. They gave generous loans for people who wanted to be teachers, NDEA loans that were forgiven in exchange for educating our children. 40 years ago, Pell Grants covered 3/4 of the cost of a public education for low-income kids. Millions of students had a chance to attend college without getting crushed by debt. But not so today. Today, Pell Grants cover only 1/3 of the cost at a public university. And the Republican budget, just keep an eye on what's coming over the next few weeks, cuts Pell Grants even further. Instead of the government subsidizing student loans, the student loan program has been stripped of key consumer protections and saddled with an inflated interest rate that now generates billions of dollars in profits for the federal government. Now, many of you are planning to enter a career in public service, so you may be aware that the government offers loan forgiveness for service, but borrowers have to wait 10 years and jump through considerable hoops to get even $1 of relief. This is just wrong. And the cures for this are obvious. Restore Pell Grant funding. Cut the interest rate on student loans and restore protections for student loan borrowers. It's just that simple, and that's what we need to do. This is one of those things where the math is simple As states and the federal government cut back on their support, tuition goes up and students end up taking on more of the bill. The solution is also pretty simple. To bring costs down, give every student a debt-free option for graduating from college. Both the state and the federal governments need to step up with more support. So that's part one, resources. Resources matter, but increasing resources won't do the job all by itself. It is also important to create real incentives for colleges to lower costs. Now, we know that incentives work. We can test this one out in the marketplace. We have, because we've seen how colleges have responded to the changing government role in higher education. Instead of responding to state funding cuts by running leaner programs focused more intensely on getting kids through school, many colleges, understanding the availability of guaranteed federal loan and grant dollars, simply passed on the cost to families through higher tuition prices. Now, to be fair, many colleges want to try to keep costs low, but they face powerful incentives to attract students, to climb in the rankings, and to bring in more federal aid dollars. There is far less pressure to hold costs down or to ensure that their services are worth the price. No matter how high tuition rises and no matter how poor the outcomes, most schools face no consequences for failing to serve their students or for wasting federal financial aid dollars. There are so few consequences for high prices and low quality that some for-profit colleges have sprung up with a whole new business model. Instead of pouring money into educational programs, many for-profit colleges invest heavily in advertising, in targeting young vets and single moms for programs that promise the moon and deliver nothing but heartache. When jobs featured in the slick recruiting advertisements fail to materialize, students are left with mountains of debt that they cannot possibly repay. I want you to consider three numbers. Keep them in your head. If you remember nothing else about this lecture, keep three numbers in your head. 10, 20, 44. Just over 10% of all college students attend a for-profit college. They take out about 20% of all federal student loans and aid, and they are responsible for about 44% of all student loan defaults. I want you just to think about those numbers. We cannot keep pouring money into schools without demanding something in return. Right now, taxpayers, through the federal government, invest about $164 billion a year in colleges. That money should be leveraged to create incentives for colleges to lower costs. That's how we should be using that money. So I want to put an idea on the table we've been talking about a little bit, and you all may have been talking some about it, because one way to do that is to force colleges to put some skin in the game on student loans. Right now, when borrowers default on their loans, students and taxpayers pay the cost for this, but not the colleges. Colleges that work to keep costs low and colleges that increase tuition through the roof get exactly the same reimbursement from the government on student loans, 100% of face value. Colleges that get students through school in 4 years with an education that supports a decent job, and colleges that fail to graduate students at all, or fail to graduate them on time, or turn them out with diplomas that are meaningless, get the same reimbursement from the government, 100% of face value. Now, if colleges are ever going to pay attention to rising expenses and failing students, they need to bear some of that cost too. And the federal government can use its leverage to make that happen. Consider, for example, just Just think of this as a possibility. If these for-profit colleges with low graduation rates and high student loan default rates were required to rebate a percentage of the federal loans that they received back to an education pool, and if that money were redistributed, for example, to help bring down the costs of college in schools that invest in getting students through on time, equipped with an education they can use, then the whole system would start to shift. The latest data show that at 347 colleges, 347 out of about the 1,850 colleges, more than half of the students have defaulted or failed to begin paying their loans 7 years out. Think about that. 85% of those schools are for-profit colleges. And even with huge default rates, they keep raking in those federal loan dollars and paying out dividends to their shareholders with no accountability. Think about what it would mean if those schools were required to refund some of the federal assistance they receive. This would force those schools to realign their incentives to serve their students and would produce more funding for the schools that are trying to bring down costs. This one's a win-win. Another way to use federal leverage is to cut costs by establishing shared savings. When colleges help more students graduate in 4 years instead of 6 years, for example, the students save money on tuition, the government saves money on Pell Grants, work study, other aid. If colleges can share in the savings, they'll have an added incentive to get students through on time and keep costs down. The goal is clear. Anyone willing to work hard should be able to get an education without being crushed by debt. And the basic mechanisms are equally clear. Put more public resources into higher education and simultaneously create stronger incentives for schools to bring down costs. No rational education system would starve state schools, squeeze students for profits on loans, and then hand over billions of dollars to schools that fail to educate their students. No rational system would do that, but that is exactly what we do in this country, and that is what we need to change. This is a critical moment in America. It's a moment at which we reconsider how we will build a future. We cannot build a 21st century workforce and a 21st century economy if colleges keep raising prices. If we drown our young people in debt, we drown this country's future. This is deeply personal for me. I grew up in a family that struggled a lot financially. We had our ups and downs, but there was no money for me for college. And I was lucky enough to get a scholarship, headed off to college, and then got married at 19 and dropped out. I was so smart at 19. And I thought it was all over, that every opportunity for me was closed off. I had wanted to be a school teacher from the time I was in second grade. And I figured I had just lost that. But I got lucky enough to live near a commuter college that cost $50 a semester. And that commuter college opened a million doors for me. I am the daughter of a janitor who ended up as a United States Senator. America is truly a great country. But that happened because I grew up in an America that was investing in its kids, an America that believed if we open those doors for education, then every kid, even kids like me, will get a chance. I believe in that America, but I understand we've got to fight for it. And that's why I wanted to be here today with you. We've got to get out there and fight for our kids. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So I will jump right in and
Good.
pick up on the fighting theme to a certain extent. So, and these, again, are questions from the audience. What do you see as the areas of greatest need for public service right now? And where would you like to see newly minted graduates funnel their energies?
Oh, look, I think of this as there are so many problems out there that need to be fixed. Anybody who wants to go into public service anywhere, God bless. So that's part one. But come on, guys, education is at the heart of it. This is where we have leverage. This is where, I'm talking about college because I want to focus on this today because I think it's an important piece of the puzzle. But we know this from babies all the way through people who return to school, non-traditional students who are coming back and trying to learn something. Education is part of the story of America. It is how we build opportunity. Once it was all about land. Right? We just open up and we had all this great land. You get out there and you clear it and you plow it. Those days are gone. Now it's got to be, and this has been true for a century now, it's got to be about what you learn. That means the way we build a future in this country is we give not just some of our children, but all of our children a chance to get out there and learn, a chance to get out there and build a future. I want to see you all there.
So I would say
that was pandering,
I would
but
say
it's
you're,
true.
I would say you're 1 for 1 on the answer.
Yeah, there we go.
Education is the
1 for
most
1.
important.
Okay,
You heard
this
that.
is it.
Yes. Okay. So shifting
So
gears,
true.
we have some wide-ranging questions.
Okay.
What steps are being taken to protect Planned Parenthood?
Oh. You're just doing this to me, right? Let's see, how many more buttons does she have? Punch, punch. Okay. Okay, so I just want to start out with this. It is not 1955. It is 2015. We have had this fight. We have had this fight. I thought our side won. We are not going back. So, what do we need to do on Planned Parenthood? I really cannot believe this. Ted Cruz is threatening to shut down the United States government if we won't defund Planned Parenthood. So let's start with this. Deep breath, cleansing breath. What does Planned Parenthood do? Planned Parenthood provides to people all across this country. Principally, it's mammograms, it's pap smears, cancer screenings, tests for sexually transmitted diseases, access to birth control. That is 97% of what Planned Parenthood does, and that is where every federal dollar that goes into Planned Parenthood is spent. That's it. That's what Planned Parenthood is about. So defunding Planned Parenthood, first flash in your mind should be, more women will die of cancer. Just keep it in your mind. More people will have diseases that don't get diagnosed. And one more thing about Planned Parenthood, just in this general, where are they? More than half of all Planned Parenthood offices are in places that have very limited access to health care. Typically, they're either in inner cities or they're out in rural areas where people don't get there. And let me just say one more about this. 1 in every 5 women in America at some point during her lifetime will use Planned Parenthood to get health care services she needs. So, bottom line for me, I'll tell you exactly what we're going to do. We're going to say not only no, it's hell no over defunding Planned Parenthood. We are ready to fight on this one. No.
Okay, I'm getting a little nervous now. I see.
I'm sorry, but this one just...
I just want to remind you, these questions came from the audience.
Good. Okay. I'm good.
Okay. How do you intend to convince people who are currently skeptical of the long-term solvency of liberal economic policies?
Partly I just want to say, really? No, but think about it this way. It comes to each of us when we are adults to say, here's the kind of future we're going to build for the next generation. Here's what it's going to look like. And let me do a really short version of this. Coming out of the Great Depression, we had lived in this boom and bust economy and kind of everybody on their own. Coming out of the Great Depression, we did two amazing things. The first one was, we said, we can actually put some regulations in place and make this economy work more steadily for everyone, for families and small businesses as well as for speculators on Wall Street. And we did it. We made it safe to put money in banks. That was FDIC insurance. We separated ordinary banking from high-risk banking. That was with the Glass-Steagall. And we put a cop on the beat. That was the SEC. And it worked. It worked for a long time. The second thing we did is we said, together, we're going to invest in the future. We're going to build a future together. And how are we going to invest in it? We're going to invest in education, a GI Bill, NDEA loans, public universities, public schools. We're going to invest in infrastructure, in roads and bridges and power grids, so everybody's got a chance. You want to start a small business, you're going to need electricity. So all of us are going to make that investment so you can start your small business and grow jobs right here in America, create opportunity for our children. And the third thing we did, we're an amazing people. We invested in research, in medical research, in scientific research, in engineering research, in education research. We invested in research because we believed that if we built a giant pipeline of ideas, a way to better understand the world, that our children would be able to do things we couldn't even dream of. And it worked. Just to pick one piece of data on this, 1935 to 1980, just that piece, the 90% of America, the part not in the top 10%, the 90% got 70% of all income growth in this country. In other words, as the country got richer, our families got richer. As our family got richer, our country got richer. GDP goes up, it all worked. 1980, I'll just pick that particular moment, is when it all shifts. And it moves to trickle-down economics. And trickle-down economics, at its heart, has a basic principle, and that is the rich and powerful should get richer and more powerful. And this is exactly how it worked. More powerful, what was the first thing to do? It was fire the cops. Not the cops on Main Street, the cops on Wall Street. They called it deregulation, but it was just another way to say, big banks, have at it. Whatever you guys want to do, and the regulators will either not be there at all or will look the other way. Yeah. And then the second one was cut taxes for those at the top, make the rich richer. And the consequence of that was there was less money then. For what? For education, for infrastructure, for basic research. So now we live in a world where for 35 years this has been going on, and let me just give you the data on how it works. GDP has continued to go up roughly just like it was from 35, right? We just had this kind of upward slope on GDP. The 90%, the group that got 70% of all income growth in America, the 90% from 1980 to 2012, that's the latest year we have data available, how much of the income growth did they get? Answer, zero. None. 100% of income growth in this country from 1980 forward has gone to the top 10%. Now, for me, that tells me two things. The first one is we know how to change this. This great inequality that we talk about now, this gilded age that we live in, this is not like gravity made it happen and we can't fix that. We know how to build a future for ourselves and our children. The second thing it tells me is if we have the will, we can do it. So when you ask the question about what's our future going to be on this, how do we have faith in it? The answer is, let's be real clear about this. The Koch brothers are out there advocating for their position, and they've got billions of dollars to be able to do it. And plenty of other folks with money and power are managing the fight to make sure that their futures are rosy. It is up to the rest of us to fight for a good future for all of America. And I just want to say this. We put the wind in our own sails. We don't sit around and wait for somebody else to do it. We put the wind in our sails. We do not get what we do not fight for. And so for me, this is all about the future. We are going to be there. We're going to do this. We know what we need to do.
So I recognize your schedule is tight.
Can we do one or two more?
This is the last question I'll
Okay.
ask.
Roger, my state director, just went. Thanks, Roger. Get him on the way out.
I'm seeing similar signals, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So I want to
I know
bring
you
us,
guys have classes and things.
I want to bring us back to education.
Yeah.
You talked about the importance of education